I've been doing stereo view cards for about 3 years. I got into it because my wife gave me an antique viewer and a pile of cards, and I was just blown away and decided that I wanted to do it. And knowing that I would make a whole bunch of mistakes, I decided that the easiest way to do it was to do it digitally, and that the easiest way to get them out would be on print film, just on prints, because that way I didn't have to worry about trying to convert back to film or doing any of that kind of stuff. So I've really done, that's basically what I do is I do print views. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of ways that you see them. This is a Keystone view. It's not one that I got from my wife, but it's very similar to that kind of stuff. And those you just kind of, you've seen these home style viewers and you drop the card in. Somebody was kind enough to bring in a really neat looking viewer over there that maybe we can try out later. And a viewer that I found at one of the NSAs a couple of years ago, I think the one down in Charleston, is this little viewer from L'Oreal, and they're pretty cheap. You can get them on the web. They come in a little kind of fold-up viewer thing. You just take it out, and they store away very nicely, and you can mail them along with views off to friends and stuff. So I've gotten rid of a fair number of these and used that as a medium to try and just get folks interested in 3D. There's this kind of little interesting viewer that I found, I can't remember where now, I think probably at one of the shows, that's for sort of postcard size things. So you can take your little print and you can put it in here, and it all folds up for mailing. And you can put a little stamp and an address on it, and then it unfolds, and this thing kind of goes together in hokey fashion, and you get a little viewer that you can look through, and so that's kind of another way to do it. I was kind of disappointed in the lenses, but I really liked the idea of it, and so that was kind of fun. And then there's the ViewMagic over-under format, which instead of the prints being side by side, they're on top of each other, and the equivalent of the left view is on the bottom and the right view is on the top. And the fun thing about those is that you can get into doing kind of panorama kinds of things because you're not limited by the width quite so much. And so this is one I was fooling around with. It's just one I shot just for fun and then stitched them together and printed them out on my printer. A couple of folks tonight have asked me, like, how do you get started? I really got started by, first of all, just doing it and fooling around with it. I got the cheapest digital camera I could lay my hands on and just started playing around. Fooling around on the web, I found the National Stereographic Association, and as luck would have it, that year was 2001 and it was in Buffalo. So I went, and I was lucky enough to bump into Shab Levy, who was secretary, membership statement secretary of the SSA, the Stereographic Society, and so I joined the print folio. And I probably learned more in the first year that I was in that print folio than I ever could learn bumbling around on my own. If you're already a member of NSA, it's only $10 a year to join. There's 2 or 3 different print folios, and I know the one I'm in is looking for members. So if you're interested, I've got handouts that I'll pass out at the end of here with contact information for the National Stereographic Association and for the Stereoscopic Society, and plus some other links to fun things with how-to stuff and resource stuff. So I'll hand those out later.
Can you explain how the folios work?
Yeah, the print folios are, thank you. The folio is a mail folio, and in it comes in the mail, and there's a box, and in there will be a view from every member of the circuit. So you take them out, and they come, the print ones come in little envelopes like this, and so you drop your view in an envelope, and you put it in the box, and you send it on its way after you've made those comments on everybody else's view. So what you get is feedback from everybody on what you did and suggestions, and some of them, particularly Shab and Ernie Reardon, have been just incredibly helpful in terms of, you know, scanning my view and marking it up and showing me how I should have cropped it differently, and it's been really quite a wonderful experience. So I joined that, and yes?
How many people are usually in one circuit? Like, how many views do you get?
The Avian, when I joined it, this folio, when I joined it, there was 20 on the circuit. We've lost some members, so I think we're down to probably 16 now, or 17, and there's room for 1 or 2 more. It takes, if everybody is supposed to get the box and not hang on to it for more than 5 days, which I have always meant 5 business days, so that I can actually get to doing it over the weekend. And send it on. And if everybody is conscientious about doing that, the box comes back inside 6 months, you know, which is really soon enough to get feedback. This folio has got 4 boxes in circulation, so every month or 2 a box comes around, and it's always entertaining, and it's really fun to just get them out and kind of sit with them for a while and play with them. And then you accumulate a pile of views that are examples of your work that everybody's had a chance to comment on, and it's kind of fun to go back and look at them later, and just to sort of see how they do. There's other groups to join. The next year I found APEC, which is a Amateur Photographic Exchange Club, and that works a little differently than the folio in that instead of a box with everybody's view that circulates, that you don't get to keep for more than a few days. This is an exchange club where every exchange you make a copy of your view as many times as there are members of that exchange, and you send the whole pile off to the secretary, and he deals all the cards out and then sends you a pile of cards back, and it's a really wonderful way to collect contemporary views, and I've been doing that now for a couple of years, so I've got a pretty good sized box full of views. Yeah.
Do they care how you do your views? I use Q views, for instance.
It's not a problem. There's Q views. There's
okay, so
you know,
any way you can get it on.
Any way you can get it on is just fine. Yeah. The thing about views that I really like is that they were really sort of the world's first multimedia format. Because you can have a window on the world that you were looking at when you captured the image, and then on the back you can tell a story about it. So all in one piece, you can tell a little story about whatever the moment was that you ended up capturing, and I think it's really kind of a nice way to do it. The other group that I'm in is also an exchange group. And this is one where the overhead of mounting cards is not nearly as high because you don't mount them at all. You just format them for 4x6 and have them printed at your local camera shop if you want to, or Photoshop, or print them out. The last exchange, I happen to have a 4x6 adapter for my printer, and I just threw a pile of cards in there and printed them out. These, there's no back to them, and the secretary, R.J. Thorpe, who sort of authored this standard, and his website tells you how to do it. He's also got templates on the site for doing it. He's the secretary, and instead of just dealing them out, he puts them in a flip book, and so you get them back. And the flip book is sized so it will sit right in the holder of a home's viewer, and then you can just flip through the things, and when you get to the end, you can turn it around and flip the other way. So that's what I've been doing for for the last 2.5, 3 years. And it's been a lot of fun. And it's definitely made me realize that work is getting in the way.
Are you using one camera or two cameras?
I have two cameras. I have a pair of Kodak DC-290s that I have attempted to synchronize and sort of did in a kludgy fashion, but mostly what I do is I just push the button down twice. I got a mounting bar from the Jasper folks that I bought used off of eBay, and that works just fine. So pretty much everything you see over there was taken with that rig. For the first year, I took nothing but sequential shots, just cha-cha stuff. And I think that's probably the fastest way to learn. Pick up, you know, the cheapest digital camera you can lay your hands on, and even the cheap ones now do a really nice job for putting out stuff this size. And just play with it. And the sequential shots, I think, have the advantage of you can really easily see the effect of the stereo bass and the toe in, and you get to experience all the things that you can do wrong, which is a wonderful way to learn, you know. So, so what I'm going to be talking about tonight is really all about just digital images. And so for this discussion, I assume that you've already got them in your computer. And there's a number of ways you can do that. You can take your film to the camera, you know, to the photo one, and they'll put it on a CD for you. Some places have even got kiosks now that if you've got digital, you can give it the little thing, and there's lots of ways to do it. So I assume that's all happened for the purposes of this. So if this thing is still awake and alive and well, I think it decided it wasn't doing anything and it needed to sleep. So I'm going to have to wake it up here for a second. What I want to talk about here is, once you get them in, just the process of looking at the views, deciding which ones you like, you know, just some easy way to flip through them so you can look at them on screen and then decide which ones are worth the effort of trying to, you know, crop and frame and color balance and print and mount. So, which, you know, sounds like a lot of busyness, but is really not all of that bad. I think we should probably turn that little guy on, and then everybody can see what I see. So, what I did for quite a while before I got a hold of a program called Pulposcope that I'll show you here in a minute, is I just found a cheap viewer off the web. The one I'm going to show you now is called I don't know, 1.1 View or something. I was looking for something the other night just as a demo for myself that was still as easy as I thought it was, because I hate when I lie about that stuff. And it was. I found this really cute little viewer. The requirements for a viewer, if you're just going to grab a free one, is that you got to be able to launch 2 copies of it, and that it won't get grumpy if you try to do that, and also that you can resize the window so you can get the 2 copies of the program side by side and have one of them pointing at your left images and one of them pointing at your right images, and then you can just toggle between them in advance.
I'm not sure, it's trying to find a connection there.
Yeah, that's because there was one minor little step that I forgot to do here. And now it ought to sync up. And so I'm going to sit down so I can run this and see, and hopefully you can still hear what I'm talking about. So, so this little guy, this is that little viewer that I was talking about. And I generally, when I'm doing this, I'll stick the right image on the left and the left image on the right, because I find it easier to preview cross-eyed. And then for this, you know, you can just you just kind of you know, click and
Can we turn down the lights? Easier to see.
get this thing going here. So it's basically just, you know, taking a look and viewing the thing cross-eyed and advancing to the, you know, switching to the other one. And as long as the images are all side by side, parallel and in folders, you can just keep stepping through that way, you know, until you find something that seems like it's worth working with. And this is really what I did, and I would find a pair and then I would bring them into photo editor. I happen to use Photoshop, but really anything that's got ruler guides and a few pretty elemental kind of functions works. Just ways to measure things and crop things and size things in a way that's exact, and pretty much anything will work. PaintShop Pro. I use version 4, which is still shareware, it doesn't expire, and that seems to do everything I need it to do. And then a couple of years ago, I found Monty Ramstad's Pocuscope program, and this has the advantage that both files, both sets of directories are just up there at the same time, and rather than doing a lot of silliness, you can just step through, you know, with a space bar, clicking on the advanced thing with your button. Now these are parallel. I can, if you'd rather see them in cross-eyed form, there's a little button up there, and it just switches them for you, so you can view them cross-eyed. And it'll keep that form as you step through stuff. The other program that was in this month's newsletter is that Stereo Remaker program that you can download for free. That has, my understanding is, many of the functions that are in here. And as far as I know, it's freeware. Do you?
It also supports, it'll make anaglyphs, and it'll do, if you have shutter glasses, it'll do shutter glasses,
Yeah, this will do anaglyphs.
and also it'll do shutter glasses.
Okay, that's neat. This does interlace, and I'm not sure whoever uses it, but it does that. So yeah, either one of those would probably work. I got started with this, and I like it, and Monty's been real good about answering questions when I get confused. So it's, I feel like it was well worth the $80 I paid for it.
He's also very responsive in bug fixes and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Takes care of my life.
Yeah, I mean, he'll turn around in a day or two and answer your question, and if it's a problem, he'll fix it and send you a fix for it. So I've been pretty happy with it. The advantage of all this is that once you find the one that you'd like, there's tools just right here for doing the cropping. So you do that, and you see that it's it crops both sides at the same time, and we can get rid of this kind of annoying tree here on that side, and then you can just kind of undo it, and it shows you what you ended up with. Either that way or that way. Then it has a nice handy little button for aligning things. So with my twin cameras, I always have a problem at one point or another with things being on the same level. So this has got a really nice little tool. If you slide this little bar up and you slide the other little bar up to match that same level point. If I can do this without it grumping at me. Then that little vertical discrepancy that was in there, it takes care of and it levels things out. Similarly, for setting the window, you can adjust the stereo window with just a slide bar. If you like a border around your pictures, he'll put a border around the pictures for you, and there's lots of tools for manipulating what that is and what the spacing between the things are. And you can save them like this, or you can save them as separate left and right images. I'll generally, if the color balance between the two sides is pretty good, I'll just save them as a single file. And I'll take this file into the next thing that I do, which is generally in Photoshop. Or, if you want, you can just pick a standard format, like if you're in the DSS group and you want this to be a 4x6 format, he'll go ahead and mount it on a 4x6 format and leave you a space where you can type in a title and some other notes on the thing. And this then you can just ship to your printer, or you can write it to a file and give it to a photo processor, put it on a disk and take it to a kiosk and crank out as many images as you want. And it's very cool for, I don't know if I brought it with me, but I got a couple of Christmas cards that were in this format from members of the folio. And it's really just kind of a nice way to do stuff. Okay? What I'll do generally then after I do that is, remember where I put this next program. I'm not going to bother to try and do a demo in Photoshop because there are too many buttons to get right while I'm trying to talk at the same time, and I'm sure I would screw it up. So what I'll do is I'll bring the images in as left and right images, and in this case I'll use the rulers to look for vertical discrepancies. So you notice that this branch over here isn't at the same height as this branch over here, and so I'll measure that and I'll bring up the calculator and I'll see what the height really should be, and I'll set which edge I'm going to keep, and I'll take a little bit off the bottom of one and a little bit off the top of the other, which is really what that Pocoscope program is doing with that single slider. Okay? So you can do the same thing with any program, you just have to crop a little bit off the bottom of one and a little bit off the top of the other, and that'll do it for you. And then you can put them up side by side and see how they look. Okay? What I'll generally do next is I'll bring them together now that I've got them the same size and I've got the alignment correct. I'll generally take one of them, and by default I usually use the left image, and just use the image size function to make the size of the picture twice as big plus a little bit, and that lets me bring both of them down into the thing, and the little bit becomes the black line in the middle, which will eventually become the border around the print. So after I've done that, then I'll go through and I'll try and do a little color correcting. And generally what I try to do here is to get the picture, the image, to match the vision that I had that inspired me to want to take this sort of picture in the first place. And so the tools that are pretty useful is a levels tool, which shows you what the distribution of the data is across from all black to totally white. Okay, and so what you like to do is you want to get the image in between those two, and you'll notice that when you do that, then it begins to brighten up a little bit. And it still isn't quite at the point where, what I saw when I saw it, so I'll generally hit the saturation and try and just kind of make the image pop. My own feeling is that because, when you take something in, you're perceiving so much more than what you can wedge into any kind of image, even a projected image. And so what, for me, helps compensate for some of that is to pump the brightness, the saturation of those colors up so that there's an impact to it. And that then tends to, for me at least, approximate that experience that I had when I took the picture. And what happened here? I advanced too far. So here's what it is after I did those things, and this is what we started with. And so you can just, and that was just, you know, took maybe a minute to do that. So then when I've done that, I've got, I'll size the picture up a little bit more with the background in black, and that has the effect of drawing a border around everything. So now I've got a nice black border. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What happens if the left and right images are somehow they end up different in saturation or brightness? Or
Then you've got to deal with them individually and correct them, you know, and use the tools to adjust that saturation or brightness or color
can you do
distribution.
that pretty easily? Is there, I mean, does it look funny if you're happy with 1%?
I've had mixed success, and it's a function of eye. You know, it's some things it seems to work great for me, and some things I can't quite get my eye to tell my brain what the parameter is that needs to be tweaked to get that color to shift just right so that the two of them look balanced when you looked at them. I've also found that if the two of them are a little bit off, that your mind does an amazing job of finding a happy medium between the two, and when you view them stereoscopically, you can't tell the difference. Yeah, Dennis?
There also was a program, a free program at one time called Metrics. It would actually color balance the two. You selected the one that you wanted, and then went over to the other one and matched the color between the two.
I like
So
that.
that was free, so if you want to look it up on the internet and see if it's still there. It's METRIX.
Isn't that a plug-in?
There's a standalone version. There is a plug-in for Photoshop, but I thought there was a standalone too, maybe not. I think you're right though, Dennis, it is a plug-in, but it works with Photoshop or any of the other
Okay.
similar.
What's the name of it again?
METRIX. The version I have expired last year, and I didn't bother to go back out and see if it's still there, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
What I'll do next after I've got it, you notice that Photoshop thinks this thing is, you know, a couple of feet wide, is then I'll resize it. And I'll do it in a couple of steps. So the first step is I'll find a resolution. I'll choose the box so it doesn't change the pixels. It doesn't actually resize anything. You just get it to change its mind about how many dots per inch it's dealing with and tell it not to resample. And so by adjusting the resolution, you try to make the thing come out to, I'm sorry about that, make that thing come out as, you know, roughly 6 inches wide. Which is a handy size for a view card. 3-inch separation is about comfortable limit for most folks. You can sometimes push that a little bit, but some folks get grumpy if their eyes are made to diverge too badly. So after I've got it sized the way I want it with that, then I'll go ahead and do another canvas move. And this time I'll pick the background color to be what I want that border color to be when I print it. And I'll set the size to, you know, to 3.5 by 7. And then it's all ready to stick titles on. And so I can go ahead and title it, and then I'm ready to print it. When I'm printing, I'm doing it with mounting in mind. So what I do as a next step is I'll create an 8.5 by 11 page, which corresponds to the sheet of paper I'm going to print it on, and I'll set the resolution of that page to match the image that I've got, so when I move it over, it isn't going to do anything weird to it. And then I'll position that image on the page, and I tend to stick the front side over sort of towards about a ½ inch from the left edge and a ½ inch from the top. That seems to work pretty well for me, and I'll show you that over here in a minute. If I'm going to be doing like an APEC exchange, you can actually get 3.5 by 7 cards on a single 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. If you turn the borders off and you get them nice and close together, which is a handy way to do it anyway, because then you only got one slice to make as you're cutting them apart. And so you can print them 3 up, and it also optimizes the PMA usage, which I'll talk about in a minute. I generally do a back for a card, and sometimes I'll do it in Photoshop. This particular card I did using a tool called Page Plus. It's just a page maker program that I got a free version of 10 years ago, and they keep sending me updates. And I'm up to version 8 now, and it's a fairly nice program. It makes dealing with text and images just a lot smoother than Photoshop, which you can do it in. But things like texture gradients or grayscale gradients on the image for blending pictures into text and that kind of stuff are just easier to do here. So I'll do it that way. And I generally align the back so they're about a ½ inch from the right-hand edge, so that when I get them flipped around and you got the back and the front the way they're going to be, everything is registered, and when you slice it up, it all kind of comes out right. For printing, for the most part, I've used Epson printers, and I've been pretty happy with them. All of the views, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions on that page over there, have been with Epson printers. My last one before it died was the 825. I was real happy with that. I needed a printer in a hurry, and a friend of mine had a Canon, and he liked it a lot, so I bought one to try it. I paid about $120 for it, and it seems to do a fine job. The current DSEC exchange, my entry was printed on that printer, and you can see what it looks like. I mount on Artist Mat. It's archival, which means basically it's acid-free, and I buy it in 32 by 40 inch sheets, which is really the cheapest way to do it. And my wife has got a big mat board cutter that she uses for stuff, so I'll rip it into 8-inch strips, and I'm about to shift menus here. Okay. Printers and programs are notoriously bad at listening to the ruler markers that you give them, and they tend to come out. This is the image that we were playing with on the screen as printed, and this came out fairly nicely. And this is the back, and these won't line up at all because they didn't listen at all to what I told it, and so I had to go back in and twiddle. The other solution is to use your handy ruler, which is your friend, and just measure and trim. What I start out with after I do the ripping is I end up with 8-inch strips like this, and I can get generally 8 view cards out of one of these strips, so I can get 40 cards out of the sheet of mat board. If there's no waste, there's always waste. So a practical number is probably in the low to mid 30s. You can count on getting cards. I use stuff called positionable mounting adhesive that 3M makes, and it comes in 50-foot rolls. You can get them 11 inches wide or wider than that. And basically what this stuff is a mechanism for turning anything into a pressure-sensitive sticker. And with that then, you apply it and then align it and mount it on the board. So this is a card that's half done. It's got half glued down. And I thought, I don't know if you guys can see, but what I thought I would do is to mount this back half, and then we'll trim it, and I'll tell you a little bit about the pitfalls of that. And then I think we'll be close to done, except for questions and such, at least into the process. There is always the Q-View. You can go and print it out and get yourself some Q-View things, and those are fine to get started with. Somebody was in here last meeting, I can't remember his name. Was you, Al? Yeah, I thought those looked swell. You know, I mean, that's a perfectly good way to do it, and it's easy, and it avoids a lot of this sort of messiness. If you want a back, you can stick a back on those as easily as nearly anything else. So I'm going to put this down because I'm going to need two hands to talk. If you need me to speak up, just say so. But I thought what I would do is show you how this stuff works. If you can see from there, that's great. So basically, this is stuff. This backing is stuff that just the glue doesn't stick to at all. The glue itself will stick to damn near anything else. And learning how to not get it over everything was probably the hardest thing I had to do, getting used to this stuff. It comes with a sheet of stuff that glue doesn't stick to, which is very handy, as you will see in a moment. In this one, since the back I aligned on the right edge, I don't want to do anything to mess up the right edge, because I'm going to want to stick that on the back of the card so that that right edge aligns with what was the left edge of the front of the card, so that when we trim it up, it all looks good. So I'll stick it on the PMA in a way that protects this right edge, because I don't want to do anything to mess with it. So I'll stick that safely out of the way over there, and you just set it down. Normally, if I was doing this, I would have the other half of this down here and would just do these both at the same time, but I didn't want to take the time to try and mount two of them. So there's a little trick. This stuff, if it gets on your scissors, it'll drive you crazy. So I generally take off a little bit, and then you just snip this off. And it's always best to cut through something. Don't ever let your scissors touch this stuff, or you'll have gunk on your scissors, and then the gunk will get on your cards, and it's a pain. So what we've done now is we've got this thing kind of sitting here, but the glue hasn't set yet. The glue gets set with pressure, and they give you a handy-dandy applicator squeegee thing. A brayer doesn't do it. It doesn't have a sharp enough edge that delivers the kind of pressure that you need to do this. And just a few strokes like that. And what this has done, now you see there, I had a little bit of crap probably on this. I got some glue from the part that I probably should have just cut away before I did that, which is now on this thing, which is probably going to render this useless for the rest of tonight's demonstration anyway. So what that's done is it's transferred the glue to the back of the sheet. So just like, you know, a sticky label, you peel it off, and now the glue is on the back of the view. And so now you take your view and you align it on the corner that you agreed you were going to register it on. Now the nice thing about this stuff is that you don't have to be exact because it doesn't really set up, doesn't really stick permanently until you squeegee it down. So up until that point, you can slide it around, and you can generally tell if you've got the thing, you know, working with the edge just by the feel of your fingers. And sometimes I get it the first time, and sometimes I don't. And if you get it wrong, you can pick it up and start over, and it doesn't really hurt anything. Now, I leave a border on because one of the characteristics of this stuff is that if you've got it too close to the edge, it tends to creep over. So if you start out with things trimmed exactly to size, you're going to be frustrated by ending up with this glue on your print, and it's always ugly. So then at that point, you just squeegee that. And now you've got a card that's been mounted and it's just all ready to trim up. This is a trimmer that I got at Michael's. And somebody else here mentioned they had one. Was it? Yeah, it was you. I waited for a 40% off sale. They send you these coupons every so often, and I went in and I bought one then, and I think I ended up paying about $25 for it. It's got little rotary cutter wheels that they do eventually wear out, and they charge you another $4 or $5 for a new one. So this thing is I find handy because it's got a ruler on it, so you can be exact if you're just whacking stuff up. It's got the little fences, so you can stick it up against the border, and it's got a little guideline on the cutting bar, so that if you don't have things lined up exactly right, you can still line them up just kind of by eye and slice them off like so. And then we'll do that on the other side. And I'll generally trim a little bit of the view, not too much, but I'll generally try to trim it right up to the edge and take a little bit. The backs, I try to pick borders that are pretty forgiving, so if you take a little bit extra out of them, you don't notice. And after you've done the sides, then you've got nice guidelines just by the print itself for doing the rest. And it's pretty good because it shows you a little bit of the view where it's going to slice. So if the contract between your image and the paper that you printed it on is good, then it all comes out pretty easily. So, and there we have a view card. Okay. It's got a nice weight to it. It's got a front and a back. And then the thing that I always like to do is I got one of these Lasco corner rounders, and this is just a little die cut die that you just kind of run the corners through. And you end up with a card that looks fairly professional. Okay. I like to protect the view once I've done it, because at this point I've got probably 20 minutes worth of labor invested in this puppy, not counting the the time to do it. Karl Motz sells these clear polypropylene sleeves. They're sturdy. They don't mess with your view of the image, so you can stick a card in and you can handle the card and look at the card and give it to folks to look at and not worry about it's being damaged. They're It's $10 for 100, so they're about 10 cents a piece. And I figure it's a pretty cheap investment for protecting what you've just done. So that's what it looks like. And you can pass it around. That's what we just did. I have some handouts, because I can't expect people to remember all of that stuff. So, this first handout are just some links that I found to be very useful. Let me just kind of take one and pass it on. And then this is a short form of what we just kind of went through tonight. So you don't have to remember that either. Take one of those and pass it on. So that's it.